Hey guys, Yes here, aka Big Dumper on Global Poker. I'm not doing a plain explain today because all the 100 NL tables broke, but before they broke, I got some nice spots, so they ran for about 30 minutes. I wasn't able to squeeze in a video. Usually I like to play for a bit before I start recording. Um, However, I'm down to do some hand analysis of a couple interesting spots. So I've already gone through some spots of my own. Um, Here, I'm looking to. I have three hands that I'm looking to review and post, and hopefully get some feedback on. Um, this will be the first one here, and this is BVB. Despite the dealer button misleading you to think that this might be the button, this is the small blind. So he is acting first throughout the hand. So we get a small blind open, and we defend the big blind with pocket sixes. This, for me, it's a pure call, at least with the ranges that I play. So we get the 10-9-5 two-tone. This board, before we look at what my opponent does, this type of board is going to include some checking. And basically, the hands that go into the check, like you're going to have to check some overpairs here. And facing a stab from a position, you can use like this really, really polar check raise strategy where you check raise to like 150% pot or something like that, or like 100% pot. In pile money with overpairs, pile money with strong top pair, etc., two pair. That's sort of the threshold. But as played, our opponent is using this like half pot size. So we'll go ahead and see that in a second. And versus this size, this is like getting to the point where it is a larger bet. Like typically people are playing B25 or B33 here. And it's more of like a range bet strategy, which I think is okay. But you definitely have some hands that would prefer to check on this board as the small blind. However, this half pot size needs to include some more checks. So sixes with a spade, clear cut call for me. Without a spade, it might be closer. So we go ahead and call. Meet the seven of clubs turn, and our opponent checks. I don't expect. Like. This is a type of card I expect to pacify my opponent. So I don't expect a lot of like bluffing, and I don't expect a lot of like. I don't expect a high barrel frequency on the seven of clubs. This is likely the case in theory as well as in practice. So a hand like sixes, it's, I could see the reason why you may bet, sort of like denying equity from overcards, as well as starting to pressure like some 5x and some 9x as well. But I think it has plenty of showdown value, and it also now has picked up, we have two outs to a set, and we have a gutter ball to like the dummy end of a straight. So it's happy to show down. It's beating ace king, ace queen, ace jack, king queen, queen jack, those types of hands. So we opt to check back, and we get the six of clubs river. Our opponent checks again, which I think makes quite a bit of sense. This is sort of like what I was anticipating, and I'm basically left with a decision whether, how much money my hand is worth. Here, I think I make a bit of like a greedy mistake and end up betting pot, where, this is a spot where I think maybe a smaller bet is more appropriate, because you think about the hands that you're trying to pressure, and it's like 10x, 9x, maybe some turn 7x. Like there's a lot of 7x in this line. We end up getting snapped off by pocket nines. So it's slow played set from our opponent. He played it quite well. But anyway, I've pulled up the spot so that we can go over what the strategy is. And I've used GTO AI or GTO WAI to use accurate sizes, etc. Anyway, BVB 10-9-5. I've plugged in the ranges that I assume are being used, and we can go ahead and look at the strategy. So our opponent's playing half pot or check. It looks like I have to assume that they're checking. Like, I don't want to make any assumption that they're range betting for half pot or splitting sizes. So this would be the strategy that they use in this simulation. Facing a half pot bet, we'll go ahead and look at some of the pocket pair region. 8s, 7s, 6s, they all fall in the same like hand class. For like all these hands as well. And it looks like without a spade, these hands are actually slightly losing calls. So this might be, well, I guess if your assumption is that your opponent is like continue c betting a little bit too often, these might be okay to call. Sort of contingent on the turn barrel frequency as well. But sixes with a spade is a call. So six of spades, 6 of hearts. We're going to be calling. And we get the 7 of clubs turn. And our opponent's using like, this looks like B66. This barrel frequency is higher than I think it would be in game. Like, I think there's going to be a number of hands, like primarily 10x and 9x, that are like happy to check back. So even some overpairs. Like, I just think this is a type of card that is maybe slightly overprotected. Like, there's going to be turn cards that are underprotected, right? When my opponent checks, like, it's likely they've just put a ton of value into the betting range, so the checking range is sort of gutted. But on a card like this, I think that it's the checking range is like maybe overly protected. I could be totally wrong about this, but you'll have to let me know your thoughts. Anyway, I don't think it would be a great idea to make any assumptions about make too many assumptions about what my opponent is doing. It's probably best to look at the theoretical strategy anyway. So we're going to go ahead and just not mess with the ranges. Our opponent checks, and then we see 6 is a pure check back. Are there hands that, yeah, I guess look at like a hand like deuces, a hand like 3s. I guess like the fold equity that these types of hands have makes them closer to bets than pocket 6s or pocket 8s. And then we get the 6 of clubs river. And we can see if my hand is too thin. So our opponent checks 9s here. I think the river is where it makes the most sense. And we see like a B66 size. If we were to split and use like a pot, I don't really think my hand would go into the pot size, but we will see. Yeah, I think these are two fine sizes to use on the river. Okay, so we do see pot being used with straights and sets. Yeah, I wonder if this is the case, like what our opponent has to call with versus pot to make this all right. 10s and 9s. So this is what we're running into. But they're calling with like some ace-9 here as well. Because they don't have ace-10 in this line. But 10-9 makes a bit of sense. 9-7. So 2 pairs, and then you're making a hand like ace-7 suited, indifferent, ace-7x. It's just ace-7 offsuit, is indifferent as well. So I'm curious as to like if our in game this is happening. Anyway, this is where we'll leave this hand at for now, and we'll go on to the second hand. This is a more straightforward spot. Button opens to 2 big blinds, so this is not the best raise size, but on global there's no option to there's no 2.5 buttons, so a lot of players are a little bit lazy and they'll just open to two big blinds, um, which loses a little bit of EV because you're not really winning the blinds all that often. So we call king six suited here. This hand is almost pure call for me, and we get the king nine or king queen deuce two tone. Our opponent continues with like a small c bet, so I assume this is like more of a range bet, and we call. So I don't think our hand is strong enough to raise, and it certainly is strong enough to call. We check the five of diamonds turn, which is a total brick, and we face a 150% pot turn bet, and this is the point of the hand where I'd want to see what was happening in theory, and whether king six of hearts is, like I'm just interested in like the removal effects of king six of hearts, and like how much it's winning or losing as a call. So we'll go ahead and look at this. We're facing pretty much a range bet, so this seems like pretty spot on. And king queen deuce is definitely a board where the imposition player can have a high frequency bet strategy on the flop. We'll go ahead and look at the out of position response. I have a hand like king six. It's quite close between raising and calling, actually, but calling is definitely, at least logic, like in my mind, logically makes more sense. So we end up calling, and we get the five of diamonds turn. Oh wow! So, I mean, this is not like necessarily like a human type strategy to bet 200% the pot on the turn. Let me go ahead and make some adjustments to the range here. So this is the exact size they used, I think. It's like 140% pot. I think what they ended up doing right is like clicking pot and then clicking up like a couple big blinds. So we'll adjust the size to be a little bit more accurate to the hand. And the strategy is quite similar. So let's see. Yeah, you end up losing some EV here then, because your value combos are going to end up missing out on some pot share, because you're using too small of a size theoretically. So that's interesting. Anyway, our opponent bets large, and we have a hand like king six, and it does have quite a lot of EV in the call line. So there's no, it looks like there's no king X. I guess what I was really interested in is like what the threshold is at this point. So you have a hand like king four, king three, queen four, queen three. Do these hands really like unblock bluffs? I guess they do. Yeah, because you're as the imposition player, you can't really have 4-3. You don't really have 4 deuce. You don't have like 6-4. Do you have 6-4? I guess you do. But I think you end up blocking more bluffs with like high cards. So calling a hand like queen jack, calling a hand like queen 10, queen 9, these hands to me seem a little bit more like they have like some negative removal effects rather than positive ones. But it looks like the threshold is queen X, in that when you have a king, you're blocking too much of the value range. So we end up calling in this hand, and that's sort of where the hand ends. The river goes check, check, and we end up losing to aces. I think aces are quite close on the river. So maybe let's go ahead and see if aces are supposed to value bet river. This will tell us a bit about our opponent's strategy. Yeah, it looks like a clear-cut bet, and a check back is losing something like 2 big blinds. So that's a little bit surprising to me. As well, honestly. Like, aces seem to be like getting closer to the threshold, the check back threshold, but seems like our opponent checks back pretty quickly, honestly. So it's like maybe they're not going all that thin on the river. To me, it seems like a clear value bet, but I didn't really anticipate it losing this much as a check back. I thought it'd be quite close. So anyway, we'll move on to the last hand. Keep this one brief. This one is pretty brief. We're just looking at the river strategy here. So we open the hijack with king queen offsuit, and the button cold calls, blinds fold. Ace 7-7 two-tone. We opt to check. I think this hand could go either way, but I'd prefer to play like a range check strategy on these types of boards. Checks back, 4 of hearts. I'm ready to show down this hand and beat like a hand like king jack or like queen jack, something like that. Depending on how passive my opponent is, that sort of dictate my strategy here. But you also don't really have, like, at least my perception of the spot is you don't have a ton of fold equity versus a hand like pocket deuces or threes even. So betting really is like not winning much. So we check, and then we get the 3 of hearts river. We check and we face a 60% pot bet. And the question is whether this hand is having some good removal. So that's what we're going to dig into. So I've set up the spot here, and there is some betting in this solution. It seems like for the out of position player, and a hand like king queen offsuit with a spade is preferring to bet. I think the reason being is like these hands have a really hard time check calling, and I think if I remember correctly, like the in position range is supposed to, like, I guess they're stabbing small, but let's see if we give them like a larger bet, whether that changes things. We'll have them bet full pot as well as 25%. Maybe in position is only supposed to use a small bet here. I'm really not sure. So looks like they're mixing a little bit. My assumption was probably not great. In this hand, that my opponent would be like, letting me show down too often. I think a lot of players will like stab weaker hands a little bit too often. Like they'll stab like this lower pocket pair region a little bit too often, and you end up not being able to realize as often as you would like to with a hand like king queen. So I'm going to go ahead and remove this other size. So action goes check on the flop. We get the 4 of hearts. Yeah. 4 of hearts turn. And our hand is, just having showdown value at this point. And our opponent checks back again. And we get the 3 of hearts river. So we check and we face a 60% pot size bet. And it looks like having the king of spades is good, like, is beneficial. So it has like some positive blocker effect. Um, I think there's something to this, but I can't really remember exactly what it is. I think spades at some point are supposed to barrel off for the in-position player. And in the check down line, like all their spade combos are like betting or something like that, right? Oh no, I guess not. I guess they're just checking down. Like when you have like here's the thing, and this is what I was thinking in game is like when you have the king of spades, you're never really betting. So is that the case in theory as well? I mean, I guess so. Like based on what we just are looking at here, when you have the king of spades on the river, like aren't you happy to show down? So, we end up calling, and our opponent ends up being a fish and flatting, 6-3 of diamonds. So I didn't really have any reads on this player before. So they're much wider than this here. Anyway, that's going to do it. I think the next video will be a play and explain, but they're kind of hard to get out sometimes, especially if I'm playing in the morning, just because tables won't run. I hope everyone has a successful 2025, and expect more play and explains this year as well as some vlogging. I've been interested in playing more live poker and vlogging a bit of my sessions there. So anyway, I will see you guys in the next one.